Hey, Joel here. Welcome back to my channel. And today I'm just doing a channel update. I've been thinking about all the videos that I've made over the past year and a half and was organizing them on the channel. And I've been thinking a lot about exactly how should I be spending my time? What's the wisest use of my time and how should I use this channel? And so since I've been thinking about it, I thought I would share some of those thoughts with you. So we're going to look at a little bit of the past, what I'm doing right now in the present, and think a little bit about what I want to do in the future with this channel. So we've got that coming up. All right, so what I've got here is I've just had the list of topics that I'm going to run through, right? I'm going to talk about all the different channel talks or how I've organized this channel or continuing to organize this channel. I want to talk about my approach to making videos and my strategies to making videos thus far, and maybe you can give me some feedback on that. Why do I do this? Who is my target audience? Who am I really speaking to when I make a video? Let me talk about that for a few minutes because I do get a lot of questions about that. So I'll preview a couple of planned videos that I'm working on right now. I want to talk about what's going to happen in the fall and my schedule. I want to talk about some appearances. I'll tell you about that I'm going to appear on other channels. I'm going to ask the question, am I getting bored of responding to creationism? Someone's like, that kind of goes back to why do I do this? But am I getting bored talking about creationism, and how do I keep it going? What's sort of the driving force there? And I want to ask the question, am I getting bored responding to creationism? Because that's what a lot of my videos are responses or critiques of creationism. What am I thinking as I'm doing those critiques, and why do you keep on doing them? That's another question I get quite a bit. Talk a little bit about my apologetic methodology, and that'll go back a little bit to why do I do this, but I want to specifically talk to what is my approach to apologetics, specifically Christian apologetics. And maybe I'll wrap that up with some messages to Sal Cordova and Emery, and which are other YouTube channels which I've interacted with. And I also want to make a statement about why I don't do debates, because I get asked all the time to be involved in debates. So I don't do debates. I do interviews or have conversations, but I will explain why I do not involve myself or will not participate in YouTube debates. All right, so let's get right to channel topics. So I have begun to organize all the videos that I've made into categories, and in the future I will probably label a lot of my videos with these category names, so you'll kind of know the style and flavor of what's coming up, because the style of the video, how I do the presentation, will probably be different in these different categories. So some of my talks are going to be very much more scripted, prepared, researched. Other ones are I'm just going to start, I'm going to open up something, a paper, whatever, and I'll just start talking, and whatever I see, I'll respond to. All right. Those are very different styles of presentation and very different forms of communication. Okay, up first, I'm going to talk about This Week in Creationism, because that's my longest running series so far. So I'm on episode number, I think, 55 of This Week in Creationism. Now, it sounds like it's a weekly thing, and sometimes it is, but I'm not promising. It's not like it comes out on a particular day each week. That was my original goal, but I'm just not going to meet it. And so it's going to be each week, or maybe every other week, possibly 3-week span between the two, but I'll try to say something about the world of creationism and what's going on, and sort of hit the highlights of important things that are happening in the world of young earth creationism through This Week in Creationism. Then I have another set of videos that I have clumped together, which I call Unscripted Duff. All right, and those are my just reflections on newly published research. So me just looking at, here's something new that just came out. I think it's got some, it's either interesting science or maybe it has something to do with science and maybe it relates to faith or young earth creationism. And what's my initial reaction to it? So I might just sort of peruse through that paper, look at the important figures, maybe the conclusions, and then kind of as an expert in the field, or at least somebody who is somewhat knowledgeable in that particular area, I'll reflect upon the significance of that particular paper. to a broader audience, or bring maybe the scientific literature to an audience that doesn't normally read like the original research articles. I've got a series that I'm like 4 or 5 into, but there's a lot of other videos that have the same theme, and so I've collected them all together into this category that I've placed them on in the channel called Flood Geology Failures. And these are observations of the world around us that just don't seem to make sense within this global flood paradigm, the global flood of 4,300 years ago from young Earth creationism. A lot of these are based on old blog posts, and so that ends up being my script. I'm editing some of my old blog posts into scripts that I can use for this particular series. That also helps me keep on track. Hopefully they'll be somewhat shorter, since I'm reading one of my old blog posts, which is usually like a 1,500 to 2,000 word article. So it could have anything to do with anything related to the global flood. So fossils, rocks, right, and so forth. All right, so mostly a geological, paleontological thing. Duff Talks Stuff. Now, this is just my grab bag category, odds and ends, things that don't really go anywhere else. Like one of my most popular videos is about killdeer and the biology of killdeer birds. I've got a bunch of other like interests of mine that I would like to talk about at some point, and I'll make videos about them. They don't really fit with the larger theme of the channel, but I said right from the very beginning, I wasn't just like a one thing. I'm just like, this is me and my interests, and some of them will have no interest to you. But I will categorize this as Duff Talks Stuff, and that's just going to be like other stuff. All right, it'll be eclectic. And so like I have a couple videos coming out in the next couple weeks that are very much tangential to what my usual fare on this particular channel. Duff Digs Deeper. So that's where I take a deeper dive into either some area of science or theology. And so these will be more technical. I'll probably spend more time actually preparing for these, making like PowerPoint slides with descriptions, and rather than just seeing my face and me just sort of talking and waving my hands, we'll try to actually dig into something a little bit deeper. The mailbox. I've got a bunch of these coming up, and that's where I answer questions from YouTube, Facebook, students, email. Right now I'm working on a whole series of ones from students, which are actual questions from a couple classes of mine, where I have them do a discussion forum where they have to ask questions of their fellow students and of me. And I have asked permission to use some of those questions and my responses to those as mailbox answers. But I also take questions that come to my email, or I see comments, and sometimes I think, well, that was a really good question. I don't really have time to, it's going to take me longer to respond, making a YouTube video, but it's something else like that's worth putting a little bit more time into, rather than just making it a single response on a YouTube chat or a YouTube comment where it's not going to be seen by very, very many people. So I'll highlight what I think are really good questions that deserve deeper answers. The Hemoglobin Challenge. I think I'm on episode 8 or 9 of this, and that is the adventures of young Earth creationism and soft tissue preservation. Whenever they don't properly cite the scientific evidence, they misinterpret it. They ascribe things to fossils that really aren't true. All right, I'm going to call those out. And also, if young Earth creationists say it correctly, I'm going to also call that out as well. All right, I want to congratulate them for using proper terminology. So the Hemoglobin Challenge. And then I have another thing that I'm right now calling ham bites, which are just my short, hopefully relatively short responses to Ken Ham. So Ken Ham does a lot of extended tweets and Facebook posts and has his own videos separate from Answers in Genesis, in which he goes off on lots and lots of topics. And so a lot of those aren't science topics, but I have an interest in responding to some of them. And so I thought I would just put those into a separate category, responding to just Ken Ham, sort of separate from Answers in Genesis. I'm definitely going to do some just straight up stories, science stories, right? Just here's the science. Here's really interesting, cool science stories, in which I won't delve into like, now how does this relate to young earth creationism or theistic evolution or, sort of a science faith angle, I'll probably just strictly stick to the science on those. And if one of those stories has a really big impact on say, other things beyond science, then I'll just make a separate video in which I do my separate response that way. Creationism in the church, that's going to be, I put that in the category of things where it's like the impact of young earth creationism and the topic of origins on the church itself, right? The theology of the church, I guess you could say the workings of how the church functions, right? Pressures put on pastors, how curriculum is affected, right? See, anything on the relationship of creationism and the church. And then very similar to that, but not directly related to specifically like the organized church, just science and faith, the interaction between science and faith, or the integration between science and faith. And a lot of my videos fall under multiple of these categories. I'm going to have more links to my talks and interviews that are posted on other channels, which I'm going to be doing more of. I've already done a couple of interviews that aren't out yet. And critiquing creationism. Again, lots of these other categories include me critiquing young earth creationism, but I'll also kind of put them all in this category as well. All things creation critique. And then there's specific issues within creationism, like the post-flood boundary, light, distance, the heat problem, what is a kind. These are all things that are discussions within creationism or debates within creationism, and these will be my comments on those debates, or it'll be like explaining those divisions and differences within young earth creationism. So what are the issues within young earth creationism? All right, so that's my current breakdown of what I'm in. That's, I guess you could say, that's me looking at all the videos I've made and saying, like, how would I organize them? It could be that there'll be new categories as I explore new things. That's one thing, I can be as organized and planned as I want, but I'm generally kind of spontaneous. It's like something grabs my interest. That's the thing. A new paper comes out, there's a new topic, something happens, all of a sudden I'm interested in researching that, because at the end of the day, I love doing research. All right? I love reading, I love figuring things out, I like learning things. And I get really excited about that. It's a lot less interesting to like, okay, now let's put it all together and like make a video. I pretty much have to make that video right away after I've done research. Otherwise, I've moved on to some other research, and then I kind of forget all that stuff. My effort level goes down in terms of putting that package together, and so I've moved on to the next idea, like the next thing's in my head. And so it's either comes out of my head and makes it onto a video, or it just goes into the waste bin. So I've had many things that I've gotten, partially worked on, but I've just lost interest in finishing them off. So all that's to say, I don't really know what will come up. Right, I'm going to show you a whole bunch of planned videos, and I hope that maybe 75% of them will actually make it into an actual video. And then what will happen is there'll be like a bunch of other stuff that I have no idea that I'm going to talk about 3 weeks from now will suddenly become the videos that I make, because I'll just get fascinated by something or something somebody said that I feel like I need to respond to. So what we got up next is, what is my approach to videos? How do I approach making the videos? I've bounced back and forth between writing very specific scripts. Sometimes I'm writing out what I'm going to say at the very beginning of a video and maybe the very end. Although if you've watched to the end of my videos, you know that a lot of my videos end with like, I really don't know what to say now. I don't really have anything to wrap it up. Obviously, I didn't write the ending. I didn't write the sum up paragraph. Like, how do I get out? How do I extract myself from this situation? I've been talking and going through all kinds of stuff, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I don't know how to wrap this up. I don't know what my final thought is. I need to get better at that. Tying the bow at the end and wrapping it up. So anyone who's watched more than 2 or 3 videos knows that if I'm not directly on script, if I'm not reading from script, that I'm tend to, and I'm not reading from script right now. I tend to go off on tangents and add way too many words. It's much less organized. On the other hand, when I read from a script, it's very unnatural. And I found that the worst performing videos are the ones that are shorter, scripted, and concise. And that doesn't really make sense to me because that's what I want to watch. But the concise, scripted stuff just seems kind of wooden and doesn't seem natural at all. I mean, none of this seems natural to me because sitting here in a room with nobody in it and talking to a computer is not natural. I'm used to standing up in front of 120 students, and I'm a pacer. I'm a walk around and use my arms and write on the board and very, very active, right? Very much interacting with the students, their eyes and their facial expressions, right, to give me feedback. And so this is very awkward. But nonetheless, where was I going with this? My approach to the channel is to talk about things that I want to talk about and I like to talk about and I think will be useful to somebody, but they're not like, gee, I think 100 million people are going to be interested in listening to this. No, this is a very specialized place. My approach is that I'm never going to have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And if I had hundreds of thousands of subscribers, something is wrong. So I think of this channel as being for those that they want to really think about topics. All right. And they're looking to increase their knowledge, so how they can communicate with others. Helps me explore. I think as I am working through questions, answering questions, responding to things, I'm in the process of engaging my own brain and learning, right? So I think I do know some things and I want to communicate those things so I think of it as being an educator. But at the same time, any good educator is also actively learning and educating themselves. And so that kind of feedback, right? Both with just like my verbalizing something that I think I know, helps me sort of organize my thoughts and really tells me whether I know it or not. So, but certainly if I did everything scripted too, it would take me a long time. There'd be a lot fewer videos. So I'm trying to balance, volume versus, I guess you could say, quality. But the question is whether the scripted ones are quality or not. I'm going to do some scripted videos because I think there's here's a really important message. And this needs to be packaged together in such a way that it's very clear. And maybe especially if it's a very controversial issue, I'll probably be much more careful about being more scripted. I just recorded a video, which is, I wanted to be much more careful about what I said, right? And so that is mostly me scripting it and mostly reading the material that goes with the images. So why do I do this, and who's my target audience? I've already started to mix these topics together, so maybe I should just start to talk about this as well. Right, if you go back to my 1,000 subscriber special, in that I gave a fairly prolonged history, back from my childhood to present, of some of the things that happened to me that very much influenced who I am. And so I'm going to point to that so you can get an idea of why I'm so interested in young earth creationism, my particular theological background, and you'll see how those two intertwine to sort of make me who I am and give me the interest that I have in terms of engaging the church. I mean, my target audience depends somewhat on the topic that I'm talking about. It's not always exactly the same, but I would characterize as primarily Christians who are seekers, right? And my interest is reforming the church, right? Helping the church work through topics of science and faith, right? When I started my blog over 10 years ago, that was my primary interest, and that was definitely my primary audience, right? I have a number of pastors, theologians, and so forth that follow this channel, and they follow my blog, follow my writings, and so forth. And they're not ones that are probably prone to end up in the chat, right? They're not going to be in the comment section. And so what I see is that I have... Okay, my dog's been coming in and out of my office, and so I've had to stop and start multiple times. That's another problem. Another reason why I probably won't do a lot of live things from my home. requires a lot of editing. Yes, I've already had to edit out three different. Well, hopefully, I'll remember to edit out multiple places where either my dog has bothered me or one of my kids has done something very loud outside, and I have to cut it off. So that's why also, I lost my train of thought. Not sure where I was, but I think I was talking about the church. I was saying that my target audience, it's a little bit different depending on the video and what I'm talking about, right? When I do just a pure science video, then the audience is pretty much anybody that's interested in science and interested in learning about that particular topic that I'm talking about. But if I were to say, like, overall, what gives me my drive and what is going to be my primary interest in many of the videos that I make, I am trying to communicate to Christians and help them understand science better, right? And in many cases also try to understand topics of science and faith and how to integrate those two, right? I've written a blog for more than 10 years, and the beginning of that blog very much was written with a strong focus toward particular people. I've been writing a blog for more than 10 years, and when I started that blog, it was really written to a few friends, right, who are interested in engaging in difficult topics, and then it kind of expanded out from there. But ultimately, many of my followers of my blog would be like theologians, pastors, influential people in the church, elders in the church. So if you listen to that 1,000 subscriber special and you see that history, you'll know that my father's a pastor, and I have extended members of my family that are also pastors, and I have brothers-in-law and other family members who are elders in various churches. And so we're deeply involved in the church. And I have been involved and been close to the church for a very long period of time. And I've gotten to know through my father and his connections, right? I've gotten to meet many, many people that are influential within the church, and they know me. And so my blog was followed by, and still is followed by, a number of different pastors and elders and various theologians, right? Seminary professors and so forth. And so in a way, they're really who I'm talking to, all right? I have them in mind when I'm talking. So even though lots of other people are listening, I'm really thinking about what they're interested in learning and understanding and maybe gleaning from me. And so I am not a huge channel, and I've never had a huge blog in terms of total readership. But what I like to think is, for my target audience, they're an influential audience, right? So they aren't going to directly necessarily share my material all the time. They aren't going to show up on the chat, all right? They're not going to show up in the comment section very often and comment. But I know many of them are watching. And they are the ones that are then taking in some of the things that I'm saying, thinking about them. And so in a way, I have some influence on people who influence others, right? Who are writing books and writing articles and so forth. So I think of myself as engaging with those that are going to have influence on others. So in kind of an odd way, I'm a social influencer, even if I have a fairly small audience. You can have a small audience if that audience also has influence. And so for me, I think that that's why I'm happy, always been happy with having a relatively small footprint. Many people ask me, why not more of an apologetic approach? Why not be an explicitly Christian apologetic station? And this isn't a Christian apologetics channel, really. A lot of what I'm doing is self-exploration, and you're kind of along for the ride, no matter what your perspective and views are. Okay, I'm really struggling to articulate myself on this particular topic. All right. It's tricky, but I have another section called my apologetic method, in which I'll try to take another stab at this. So let's move on. Preview of planned videos. Let's take a look at some things that I've got planned. All right, so I'm just going to read some titles of things, and I'll say a few things about them. All right, I get asked all the time, what is my particular view of human fossils and Homo naledi in particular? What do I think about hominid fossils? It's kind of a way of asking, what do I think about Adam and Eve? What do I think about human origins? So I talk a lot about the topic in the sense of critiquing young Earth creationism and their misunderstanding of the scientific evidence in this particular area. But I've never laid out well, what is your view, Joel? What do you think of these particular things? And so I am working on that. All right. And I don't know how long that's going to take for me to work on that in terms of putting that together. But it is my intent to address that particular topic in the not too distant future. I've often said in response to some questions that I am a creationist, all right? And I consider myself a literal creationist. Now, anyone who's watched this station more than 2 times, all right, more than 2 of my videos knows that I'm not a young Earth creationist, right? That I have significant issues with the apologetic method of young Earth creationism, and thinks that it's more damaging to the Christian worldview than it is helpful. So what exactly does it mean that I am a literal creationist then? What is my particular view? Again, that's another thing that I'm asked fairly frequently, and I will address in more detail. There's a hodgepodge, all right? I saw something on the Gunnison River the other day, and that's going to be another episode of flood geology failures in the not too distant future. Ken Ham's been talking about climate change. I've already done one video about his answers in Genesis. Continued ramp up on the whole climate change denial thing. And so I do want to continue to talk about that. That gets me into another topic that I've often avoided, which is climate change, because it's so controversial within talking about it within Christian circles that it's kind of, but I have a few things to say about why young Earth creationists end up being climate change denialists at the same time. Why are those 2 things related? That's kind of the thing I want to discuss. I've got a big series that's based on my blog series on what I call the lost world of the Nile River. And it's a challenge to young Earth creationists to explain the origins of the Nile River and the Egyptian civilization. And one of the reasons I really like that particular series, and it's one of my favorites, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback on it, is that it deals with a geological challenge to young Earth creationism that deals with geology of an area that's actually written about in the Bible. All right, and so you are constrained by biblical timeline constraints in terms of the Bible. For example, there's stuff written about Egypt and the Egyptian dynasties, and they are living clearly on a floodplain, right? But that floodplain sits above a very deep canyon that's filled with sediments. And so we're going to get into the geological history of that particular canyon and how that makes the timeline of young Earth creationists very challenging to explain. And the same thing is true for the Dead Sea. We're going to talk about the origins of the Dead Sea, and I have a 7-part series written up on the Dead Sea and its origins. And so we'll look at the constraints the Bible puts on the history and origins of the Dead Sea. I want to talk about the South American interchange. I've got something called the Ungulate Challenge to Young Earth Creationism. I'm hoping to do some kind of a flood boundary debate, and that would be potentially with a friend of mine. And other really eclectic stuff. Penguins huddling. What does that have to do with emergent properties? Now, I do want to talk about the Discovery Institute. If you've followed my channel very long, you know that I rarely mention the Discovery Institute or evolutionnews.com. And I want to explain why I don't listen to them, why I rarely even look at their website anymore, and why I don't talk about their articles. Why do I just ignore that whole side of what some people call creationism or creationism sensu lato? All right. Ant mimic beetles and creationism. I talk about beetles that look like ants and what that has to do with young Earth evolution. Exploding ants and altruism. Challenge to Ken Ham. Send your employees to professional science conferences. That's based on a blog post. Where is the next generation of creation scientists? Let's look at some statistics and let's think about who were young Earth creationists of the last 20 years, and then who will be the young Earth creationists that are the influencers of the next 20 years. I do want to talk directly to pastors and theologians who preach on social media and suggest some, provide some advice for them who feel like they need to preach about science on social media. Nectar robbing bees. We'll talk about natural evil and the image of God. All right, so I'm just showing you as sort of a snapshot of some of these things because I'm going to give you an idea that's sort of like a little bit of theology, a little bit of science, a little bit about creation science critique, and then of course there'll be This Week in Creationism, and then a smattering of other things, like I've got a whole bunch of answers to questions that people ask. All right, so that's preview of planned videos. There's going to be a noticeable reduction of output in the fall. I have news for you. This isn't my real job. In case you're wondering, that the YouTube channel is not my income at all. I have a full-time job. It's more than a full-time job a lot of the time, and this fall will definitely be more than a full-time job. It's probably gonna be more like 50 to 60 hours a week. I teach this fall I will have about 200 students, 100 students in a general genetics course. And I'm changing textbooks, and so I'm revising all of my lectures and really doing an overhaul of that particular course. At the same time, I'm also overseeing genetics lab, and so I have like 4 sections of lab, each with 20 to 24 students in it. And we're going to be doing an extended project through that lab. That's a molecular genetics project. So we extract DNA, we're going to quantify DNA, we're going to do PCR, amplify a particular gene. We're going to take that gene, we're going to splice it up and look for variants in it. We may actually do some DNA sequencing, get the actual sequence of that, and then we'll do a bunch of bioinformatics. And a lot of that are things that we've done it in the past, but I need to do a bunch of expansions on that. And it just takes a lot of time because these are things that I can't do with a graduate assistant. I have a graduate assistant, helps with grading, helps with the lab, but I'm still there in the lab because it's all about my experience, right, with molecular biology, molecular genetics. And so I need to be there to I tell the stories about DNA extraction and sort of like my past experiences and so forth as I'm helping get them experience actually performing these various techniques. That's to say, I'm going to be really busy in the fall. So I am recording stuff now that I will kind of spread out over the fall some. So there might be something there like once a week, but I don't know how much time I'll have otherwise to do this. And if I could say this also is why, someone will say, well, you should do this, you should do that, you should make your video this way, you should add this to your videos and all that. Well, all that takes time, right? I have to find some kind of balance between either just making one video a month that's like really, really well done, or maybe making more videos, but they're not quite as, fine-tuned as they could be. And so I struggle to put out something there that's not edited as well as it could be. On the other hand, if sometimes it's either nothing or something. And thus far, I think people like something rather than nothing. Okay, moving on. I will be making increased appearances on other channels. I've been really busy, and as I just said, I have a real job. This is a side thing for me. And so in order for me to decide I'm going to spend time on another channel, that's going to take away from the time I could spend making my own videos. And since I really enjoy making my own videos, it's kind of like, okay, well, to me, that's a job, doing something on another channel, because it takes preparation. Right? Even if it's like, hey, we're just going to talk about this, I usually feel like I need to prepare at least some notes so that I can because especially if it's something live, I need to feel like I'm more prepared, because I do tend to be rambly if I'm not prepared, as I am being right now. And so my choices in terms of where I'm going to appear often involve am I going to enjoy doing that? Right? I mean, I do think about will this really be a good thing to do? Would this be a really useful thing to do for people? Would it be good for them to hear me on this particular channel? And then sort of in last place in terms of my decision making, it's if I'm on that channel, I'll be able to be seen by people, and then I'll get more subscribers to my own channel. That's generally not a big factor in my decision making, because I'm not like my main interest isn't like I got to grow this thing to hundreds of thousands of subscribers and I can make an income off this and do this as a living. That's way outside of anything that I perceive as possible or as something that I really am looking to do. And so, I mean, I'm not dumb, right? I'm not avoiding traffic, right? I understand that there is a motivation to be on other channels because that also helps my brand, so to speak. And so that is a factor. I'm just saying it's not the most important factor. And so I am going to appear on other channels, and they're going to be fairly diverse. I mean, so I'm appearing on a couple Christian apologetics channels. And usually I restrict myself to, it's a very specific topic, and often it's going to be something I know a lot about, right? So if they want to know about some particular thing about what young earth creationists believe or my response to that, and so I'm going to talk about that. I'm also going to appear on channels that are not Christian at all. And in that case, I am appearing as I am going to be maybe a critic of young earth creationism, but I'm going to be a very polite critic of young earth creationism, trying to reflect the fact that this is how I feel like Christians should engage with the culture and should engage with other people that aren't Christians. And I won't necessarily preach Christianity on a station that is not a Christian apologetic station, but nonetheless, I will represent, a person who is a Christian working in this field and has these interests, and not afraid to express my opinions in that area. So I'm spreading myself over a number of different sites, and that you'll probably see in the next couple months. Okay, let's ask the question: am I getting bored responding to creationism? Some people like you've been doing this, for so long, and part of the answer is yes, and part of it is no. There are times where I was like, okay, I just need a break. I can't talk about young earth creationism anymore. I'm just repeating myself. Most of everything I say now is a repetition of something I've said in the past. But repetition is actually necessary because I know there are devout subscribers who maybe watched everything. And so it's like, oh, Joel, you've already said that. You already said that before. But every time you talk about a topic, like the origin of species and creationism, you're going to have to go through the spiel of explaining what young earth creationists think about that topic and providing a basic critique of it. And so that does get a little bit tedious at times, but it's necessary because there's always new people. There's always new people that have new questions. There's always people that are seeking out there. There are always people that are young earth creationists who may have been taught that all their lives, and then they didn't necessarily run into me, but they ran into somebody in their class or some friend or something like that gave them a different perspective and started making them think. And then they start to search, right? They search for how should I understand this, and what are some other ideas, or what else don't I know about young earth creationism? And so they're looking for critiques, and they're also looking for positive affirmation of other things, other ways to believe, right? And then they're running into my blog or my YouTube channel, in which case I need to expect that each time that they come and find that, they're finding it for the first time. And so there has to be a necessary sort of simplistic background to each particular video, even if you're going to go into depth on something a little bit later in that video. So do I get bored? Yes, there are times that I get bored. But you know what? I also get a lot of emails, right? I get a lot of feedback. And I get a lot of feedback from people who tell me that how much I've helped them. And it only takes getting a few of those a month, which I really do. I really do get a couple of those a month. People who tell me their story about how they've come to a better understanding of their faith and science. And so going back again to why do I do this? That is a really big motivating factor, right? I don't want to see people, who are young earth creationists. And that is one of my primary audiences, right? People who are young earth creationists, or have been taught young earth creationists. They wouldn't call themselves young earth creationists because they're not like devoted to young earth creationists. It's just all that they know, right? It's all that they know. But then they encounter and experience other ideas, even within the Christian church. And that sets them up for some cognitive dissonance. It sets them up for some conflict in their minds. And so I want to provide them a way of extracting them from young earth creationism, but maintaining them in the faith, right? Maintaining them as Christians. And that's why I say that's a different audience than many of you listening aren't in that particular position, but those are the ones that when I'm talking, right? That's why I'm adding in little things as I talk, because they're directed toward that particular audience. And you have to understand that if you're not of that particular mindset, that is what I'm doing. And it's getting those responses that make the difference, right? All the other comments about like, well, you should be doing this, or you shouldn't be talking about young earth creationism, or that's stupid, or whatever, that just all rolls off my back, because that's not you aren't my target audience. If that's what you want me to do. That's not who I am, and I'm doing who I am and what I feel like I'm led to do on this particular channel. All right, for those of you who aren't young earth creationists, I just want to remind you that, people can get really upset about air, and they can get very, very, agitated, right, by the dumb things that some young earth creationists say, right? They accuse them of outright lying. And what I would say, how do I keep my cool? And I don't always, because I'm not perfect. I'm a sinner too, and there are times when I go too far and I don't have the right attitude. But what I do try to keep in mind is that people lie, all right? Typically because they have a deeper problem. All right, it's like trying to fix that particular error. Like, this is something you lied about, as if they're just going to change their mind. Doesn't acknowledge the fact that there is a much deeper issue there. There's deeper questions that have to be resolved first before they can understand why they are so adamant about misunderstanding science, right, or lying about things. Right, lies often they cover up for insecurity. And so just simply being upset, calling someone a liar, and saying they should change doesn't often make people change. Right? It just doesn't. It's just a very ineffective strategy. Right? Shouting about lies, calling people names, calling creationists names, saying they're dumb. It doesn't really help them deal with what I think is their inner demon, the thing they haven't really confronted. What are their inner questions? And I think most of them aren't even conscious of like what is really causing them to have their particular views. So I maintain a positive attitude, right? I try to maintain a positive attitude without getting upset. Try to continue to have positive dialogue with people. I got to move on. I feel like I had a lot more to say about that, but I could just go on and probably not say anything really that useful. So let's just go on to apologetic methodology. And this goes back to what I was saying before about my approach to videos and why do I do this. I receive criticisms all the time about how, like, I'm not providing the gospel message at the end of videos, or I'm not infusing my videos with a specific Christian apologetic, a defense of Christianity. You say, well, you're a Christian, but you're not like specifically espousing Christianity. You're not providing the Christian answer to these questions sometimes. Sometimes you're just providing a critique. There's a place for just providing critique, and there's other places for providing a defense for my Christianity. So what is my apologetic methodology? Who am I as a Christian, irrespective of my intent on a YouTube channel? Right? My witnesses through my life, through my interactions with people, treating them with respect. I'm always, am I always going to be good at that? Am I always going to do it the right way? No, I fall short many, many times. And for that, I have to ask for forgiveness. I'm not going to be that in your face with the Bible person, except I will act my best. I will act to the best of my ability to be Christ-like, to act in a Christ-like fashion. Right? The Christian life involves, I think, embodying the teachings and example of Jesus Christ in a way that attracts others to the faith, right? Through the way they live their lives. It's about displaying love, grace, the truth of Christ through our actions and interactions with others. I think if I can try to embody the qualities of love and compassionate, having integrity, being honest, being humble, being gentle, having a servant heart, right? Trying to build authentic relationships in which I am listening, right? Rather than simply telling, demonstrating care and support, right? Looking for personal transformation, trying to continuously grow and improve in my own journey, right? Reflecting my own faults and admitting error. If I have an invitational approach, that means, not forcing my beliefs on others, but inviting them to explore the experience that I have experienced in my Christian walk, right? If I embody all those qualities, then I can effectively communicate the messages of Christ without relying solely on just quoting scripture or using what I call fear-based tactics that many people do, right? My life becomes a testimony to the transformative power of the Christian faith. That makes me a witness of Christ in a way that is inviting, I hope respectful, and reflects God's love for all people. What I hear from people all the time, all right? What I get emails about, and one of the most important things that I hear is one of the most important things that I do is I help people with their off-ramp from creationism and the bad theological baggage that it carries. Like, a lot of people are under the influence of young earth creationism and have their entire Christian identity wrapped up in their young earth creation theology. And when that starts to break down, and that's usually not breaking down because of me, they're not going to listen to me. They're not watching my video. It's going to break down because of something else that they've interacted with in their more personally, all right, with them, in their interactions with other people they know. And then they're going to go out and seek additional information. They're going to seek and try to find people who have also maybe left young earth creationism, but also maintain their Christian identity. How can they do that? Because Ken Ham has taught them if that breaks down, if you're not wrapped up completely, you don't have your identity wrapped up in young earth creation theology, then you're going to be an atheist. There's only those two options. So that's where I come in, right? I show others that there is a better way to understand God and his creation. And it's not a compromise way. It isn't an in-between way. I truly mean it's a better way. It's a more fulfilling way. It's a more Christ-honoring, biblically faithful rationale and reason and meaningful way for living through and for Christ. So I'm not at the end of my talks giving a call, to come to Christ. And I will do talks which are heavily influenced by theology and discuss theology. But I will also do talks that are just science, just things that I'm interested in. Right? Because that's not my primary intent. I'm not creating a Christian apologetics channel. I'm creating a channel in which I can talk about lots of things that are meaningful and important to me. And although my Christian faith is the most important thing to me, I don't necessarily share my Christian faith in this type of way to an audience through a YouTube channel or a blog post. I do that through personal interactions, right? It takes creating meaningful relationships, authentic relationships with individuals. Behind the scenes, I have people who write me, and I will develop a relationship with them because I feel like they have honest questions, and I'm willing to respond to those questions. But I don't respond to gotcha questions, right? The kind of thing where it's like, so what's your view on this? And what's your view on this? And what's your view on this? So you say you're a Christian. Well, what is your view on this particular thing? They're not really interested in my answer. And if I sense they're not actually interested in the answer, they just want to use that answer to make another point or to show me up, I'm not going to engage, all right, with them. And that gets me to my last point here. I had planned, after talking about sort of my Christian witness, to have a message for Sal Cordova and Emery / Harry. And yeah, I have too much to say. There's just not enough time because I'm running really long. I'll just say really briefly, both have small YouTube channels, and I've interacted with them a number of times. I've been on Sal's channel. I had a very cordial discussion with him. And I know both of them have extremely strong words to say about me. Sal's taken to call me Dr. Doofus, and apparently banned me from his channel. That they have strong reactions, and I will just say that I don't feel the same way. I'm not upset. I'm not upset about what they've said. I understand their passion for what they believe, and they know that I believe that they're wrong and that their souls are in danger as a result, and that's what I really care about. And so I'll continue to put out the olive leaf, and if they have a change of heart, I'm perfectly willing to talk to them in the future. And this recent spat has really no impact on me personally. I'll just leave it there. I got a lot of other things I could say, but maybe I'll make another video or have a discussion at a different time. So let's get on with our last topic. So I want to explain a little bit about why I won't accept an offer to participate in a debate, specifically a YouTube debate. So here's some of the rationales. All right, so here are some of my rationales. As an expert, I find YouTube debates don't really focus on productive discourse. They just don't. I've rarely seen a YouTube debate that was in which I learned something from it, something productive, something useful. Right? I'm an expert in some areas, right? Some areas that people might be interested in debating on. But my primary goal is to contribute to productive and informed discussions in those areas of my expertise. And YouTube debates often have a limited time format. I mean, even if the time limit is 2 hours, that's still limited. And they always just tend to devolve into heated exchanges. And they're entertainment-focused spectacles. I get it. That's part of why what attracts people to the debates is the entertainment value. And I'm not an entertainment person, right? These formats don't always allow for thorough exploration of complex topics. I would say they almost never, allow thorough exploration. And I have time constraints, right? I've just explained I've got a real job. Engaging in debates on YouTube is a time-consuming endeavor. And if it's not worth doing, then it's not worth spending the time on, right? I would have to do a lot of research, preparation to participate in certain debates. I think there's alternative platforms that are much better suited for people who want to have serious discussion. The other thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to focus my time on publishing and working on peer-reviewed journal articles because that's a whole different audience. Again, as like I said before, way back at the beginning, one of my primary audiences are maybe academics, not science academics, but academics like theologians and seminary professors, right? Pastors, right? Elders in the church. And so to provide them with resources, their resource isn't necessarily a YouTube debate, right? Their resources are going to be things like, I need to put something in a more established publication form, not just a blog that they can refer to. And that also has a longer shelf life too. How long does a YouTube debate shelf life? Like if you don't see it in the next 2 or 3 days, the number of views of that debate don't go up very much if you're looking at it after a year, right? Even though it's out there, you might say, well, it'll be there for the next 50 years. Well, we don't really know if it'll be there for 50 years. But even if it was there for 50 years, it's going to have a very, very low impact. Now, a peer-reviewed research article like my article, Dissent with Modification, a critique of macro and microevolutionary views of young Earth creationists. Right, that was published in, I think 2019 maybe. And it's got, I think, 20,000 views. And that's not a lot for a big research article. But that's got a long life because it'll be in that journal for many, many years and it'll be referenced, right, in the future. And it will continue to accumulate views and it'll be used as a resource. That's much better time spent for me. And so everything I'm doing, I only have a limited amount of time because of the other job that I have. I have to parse out and say, like, what areas can I have the most influence? YouTube debate is pretty much down at the bottom of the list. And so although other people would like to see me on YouTube debates, I don't feel like that they're the proper use of my time. I don't think that they involve in constructive dialogue. It's mostly destructive dialogue, all right? Because I'm committed to fostering constructive dialogue and actually engaging with individuals who are really interested in learning and exploring topics. And most people following those debates don't have a genuine interest in learning. They have an interest in being of somebody helping them have better hit points for their particular viewpoint, right? They're not engaging in trying to understand your view. Chances are, if they already like your view, then maybe they're trying to understand that better. But they're not engaged in trying to understand alternative viewpoints. And most of the reason you go on a YouTube debate is because you're trying to influence other people, not people who you've already influenced or already believe what you believe. All right, so again, it's essential for me to direct my efforts toward engaging with people who are open to reasoned discussion, right, and are willing to critically evaluate different viewpoints. And I'm interested in personal interactions, right, not these fanfares. And to be honest, I mean, you've seen that if I talk off the top of my head, I'm not the best at organizing my thoughts. And so I'm not, debate format isn't really my strength either in terms of speaking. And so you got to go with where your strengths are. So I do interviews, especially interviews where I maybe know what my questions are and I can prepare for them. I'm always up for conversations. Right? I have conversations behind the scenes. It's that personal engagement that really makes a difference. So that's the YouTube channel, Joel Duff. It's kind of eclectic. It's kind of all over the place, but I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to see what I'm willing to take advice. People tell me all the time what they would like me to talk about or would like me to say or think that I'm underplaying or overplaying, and I take all that into consideration. But at the end of the day, these are my thoughts, the things that I would like to communicate, the things that are important to me. And as much as you find them important or helpful, then that's great, and I would love to hear that. I will say that I have trouble with keeping up with the comment section on the YouTube. Now that the station or the channel has grown, I get too many comments, and as you've seen, I have time constraints. Not only do I have a job, but I've got 5 kids. Well, only 3 of them are left in the house, but it's still a job, right? That still keeps me busy, and I have a lot of home projects. I just got done finishing resealing the deck, all right, and that's just an ongoing project. So between all those things, I'm kind of like, dabbling in this YouTube stuff. And so I'm getting invitations to talk. I'm getting lots of comments. I'm getting emails. And I'm trying to make the most wise use of my time. So if you've written me and I haven't responded, feel free to write me again. I also need reminders. It's easy for things to get lost when I get such a deluge of email, both professionally and, hobby-like. This is my hobby. I appreciate the interest. I appreciate you taking this journey with me. And we have many things more to explore. I'm not going to run out of material anytime soon. I've got a growing list that's at least 100 topics long of things of video ideas that I have, and finding time to do them is the big question. I make an eclectic set of videos. I have a very I'll say a kind of an eclectic audience. Right? I've got anything from young Earth creationists that watch me. I have young Earth creationist friends who watch these videos. I have a number of people at my church that follow me. I've got colleagues that follow me, so academics, scientists that follow me. I've got atheists that follow me. I can't make everybody happy in the sense that I'm going to tell them things that they want to hear and tell them things that they're all going to agree with me. But I hope that my approach is such that even if you disagree with me, you'll at least have a little bit of respect for my thinking through the things that I've said and my willingness maybe to listen to contrary opinions and to change my mind. If you've listened to a lot of my videos, you know that I have responded to others who have pointed out things. I was like, I didn't think of that, and I need to rethink, my thoughts on that particular topic. So that's why I said this whole thing is kind of a journey. You're taking a journey with me in terms of making us, making all of us understand this world around us better, in a multitude of different ways. So obviously I didn't write a particular script that I can read to sort of wrap this thing up, right? I'm meandering all over right now. And I'm trying to find like the perfect words to end this with, and I never have those. So I really need to work on that sort of finale, the thing that I always say at the end to send everybody off feeling good about themselves. But I don't have that, so I'm just going to say stick around. Lots of videos to come. I hope you're not going to unsubscribe after this, but if you do, good luck to you, and maybe we'll see you at a later time. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.